The air inside the forward operating base in Kandahar province was thick with dust and diesel fumes. Private First Class Michael Torres had been awake for 36 hours, his eyes burning under the rim of his Kevlar helmet. His unit had just returned from a disastrous patrol along the southern ridge, where an IED had shredded their lead Humvee. 3 men were down, medevac to Bagram, and the rest of them were operating on adrenaline and rage. Michael, a broad-shouldered 23-year-old from El Paso, Texas, was the newest squad member, still carrying the fresh-faced nervousness that veterans love to mock. But tonight, he was not nervous. He was furious. His best friend, a quiet kid from Ohio named Private Danny Rios, had been the gunner in that Humvee. The blast had torn through the turret, and Danny had screamed Michael's name over the radio before going silent. They didn't know if he was dead or alive. All Michael knew was that the mission had been ordered by someone sitting in an air-conditioned command center miles away. Someone who had never tasted grit between their teeth or heard the whistle of a mortar round. He hated them. He hated the brass. And right now, he hated anyone who wasn't covered in the same grime as him. The base was a chaos of shouting officers, running medics, and the thrum of generators. Michael was trying to get to the ammunition supply point to restock his magazines when a figure stepped into his path. It was a woman. She was shorter than him, wearing the same desert camouflage, but her uniform was impossibly clean. No sweat stains, no dust on her boots. Her rank insignia was partially hidden by the strap of her body armor, and in the flickering floodlights, Michael saw nothing but an officer. A staff pogue. Someone who had probably spent the war behind a desk. "Move," he growled, trying to step around her. She did not move. Instead, she held up a hand, palm out, and spoke in a voice that was calm but firm. "Stand down, soldier. The ACP is locked down for a casualty report." Michael did not hear the words. All he heard was authority. Authority that had sent his friend into a kill box. Something snapped inside him. Without thinking, he surged forward, grabbed her by the shoulders, and shoved her hard against the corrugated steel wall of the nearest containerized housing unit. The impact made a hollow bang. His forearm pressed across her collarbone, pinning her in place. His face was inches from hers, and he could see the faint freckles across her nose, the sharp intelligence in her eyes. But he did not care. "You don't tell me to stand down," he hissed, his voice shaking with exhaustion and rage. "You don't get to stand there with your clean uniform," and he stopped. Because her hands had not gone up to defend herself. She had not screamed for help. Instead, she had reached up very slowly and pulled the collar of her body armor aside, revealing the silver oak leaf on her left collar. But that was not what froze him. It was the name tape above her right breast pocket. It read, "Race," and below that, a single star. Not a major. Not a colonel. A rear admiral, lower half. 1 star. Michael's arm went slack. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The rage drained from his body as if someone had pulled a plug, replaced by a cold, sickening wave of pure terror. He had just put his hands on a flag officer. He had shoved an admiral against a wall. In the United States military, that was not just insubordination. That was assault. That was a court-martial. That was years in Leavenworth. Admiral Elena Reyes did not shove him back. She did not call for the MPS. She simply straightened her uniform, looked him directly in the eyes, and said, "Private Torres, I know who you are. I know your squad was hit tonight. And I know you are running on fumes." Her voice was low, meant only for him. "But you will remove your hand from my person, now." Michael stumbled backward, his boots scraping the gravel. His rifle clattered against his chest plate. He tried to salute, but his arm would not cooperate. He tried to speak, but his throat had closed. All he could manage was a whispered, "Admiral, I didn't. I'm sorry." Admiral Reyes raised a hand again, not to stop him this time, but to signal patience. She glanced around. No one had seen. The chaos of the base had swallowed their moment whole. She stepped closer to him, close enough that her voice would not carry. "Listen to me carefully," she said. "You are going to walk to the mess tent. You are going to drink 2 bottles of water. You are going to sit down and not move until a chaplain comes to find you. Do you understand?" Michael nodded, his entire body trembling. He expected her to walk away, to go file a report that would end his career before it had truly begun. But she did not. She reached out and tapped the medical patch on his sleeve. And when you see Danny Rios again because he is alive. They just pulled him out of surgery. You tell him that his admiral asked about him. Then she turned and walked into the darkness, leaving Michael Torres alone with his shame and his disbelief. He did not sleep that night. He sat in the mess tent, surrounded by the smell of burned coffee and the distant sound of artillery, replaying the moment over and over. He had shoved an admiral against a wall. An admiral who knew his name. An admiral who knew Danny's name. How was that possible? He was nobody. A private first class from a nowhere town in Texas, and yet she had not destroyed him. She had given him water. She had told him to sit down. She had shown him a mercy he did not deserve. 2 days later, after a fitful stretch of patrols and sandstorms, Michael was summoned to the command tent. His heart pounded with every step. He was certain this was it. The handcuffs. The charge sheet. The end. But when he dug through the canvas flap, Admiral Reyes was standing behind a folding table covered in maps and radio equipment. She was alone. No MPS, no JAG officers. Just her, pouring hot tea from a thermos into 2 metal cups. Close the flap, she said without looking up. And sit down. You look like you haven't slept since I last saw you. Michael sat. He could not help but stare at the single star on her collar. It seemed to glow in the dim tent light. She pushed a cup of tea toward him. He did not touch it. His hands were shaking too badly. I'm not going to ruin you, Private, she said finally, leaning back in her folding chair. That's not why I called you here. I called you here because I need you to understand something. When you shoved me against that wall, you were not shoving Admiral Reyes, you were shoving every bad decision. Every piece of bad intelligence, every moment of fear and exhaustion that had been building up inside you. And I understand that. Because 20 years ago, I was you. Michael looked up, confused. Ma'am. Admiral Reyes smiled, but it was a sad smile, the kind that came from old wounds. She pulled up the sleeve of her uniform, revealing a long, jagged scar that ran from her elbow to her wrist. I was a lieutenant junior grade on my first deployment. We took incoming fire. My chief petty officer was hit. I froze, and then I got angry. I screamed at my commanding officer in front of the entire bridge crew. I called him a coward. I told him he had no right to send us into danger while he sat safe in his chair. She paused. He could have ended me. Instead, he sat me down and told me something I have never forgotten. He said, "Anger is not your enemy, Lieutenant. Blind anger is. Learn to see through it." Michael swallowed hard. Admiral, I don't understand. I put my hands on you. That's assault. She nodded slowly. Technically, yes. But technically, you were also suffering from acute combat fatigue, dehydration, and the recent trauma of watching your friend get blown up. Any half-decent defense attorney would have you out in 6 months. And any half-decent commanding officer would have seen the signs before you snapped. She set her cup down and leaned forward. I am not going to punish you for breaking. I am going to give you a chance to put yourself back together. But you have to trust me. Can you do that? Michael did not know what to say. His entire understanding of the military hierarchy of rank, of discipline, of the unyielding chain of command had been shattered in a single moment. An admiral was not supposed to offer tea to a private. An admiral was not supposed to share her own scars. And yet, here she was, real, human, broken in her own way. Yes, ma'am, he whispered. I can do that. Over the next 3 weeks, Michael's world changed in ways he never could have imagined. Admiral Reyes did not assign him extra duty or reduce him in rank. Instead, she assigned him to a temporary role as a liaison between the forward infantry units and the command staff. It was an unheard of position for a private. He was to accompany her on briefings, carry her radio, and most importantly, report back to her on the morale of the enlisted soldiers. She wanted the truth, not the sanitized reports that filtered up through the chain of command. She wanted to know who was struggling, who was exhausted, who was on the edge of breaking like Michael had broken. At first, the other soldiers in his squad did not understand. They saw him walking beside the admiral, holding doors for her, taking notes in her meetings. They called him a kiss-ass, a bootlicker, the admiral's pet. But Michael did not care. He was learning. Every briefing, every strategy session, every tense radio call with battalion commanders taught him something new about the weight of command. He saw the reports that came across Admiral Reyes's desk, the casualty lists, the intelligence failures, the requests for more equipment that would never come. He saw her stay up until 3 in the morning, night after night, trying to find a way to protect her people with the limited resources she had been given. The deployment ended 2 months later. Michael returned to the United States with the rest of his unit, carrying the Silver Star in his pocket and a new understanding of what it meant to serve. He did not stay in the Army. He finished his enlistment and went to college on the G-bill, studying emergency management. But he never forgot Admiral Reyes. He never forgot the night he had shoved her against the wall, expecting to be destroyed, and instead being saved 5 years later. Michael graduated at the top of his class. He stood on a stage in front of hundreds of people, wearing a cap and gown, holding his diploma. And sitting in the front row, wearing a navy blue dress uniform with 2 stars on her collar now, was Admiral Elena Reyes. She had flown across the country to see him. She had not told him she was coming. After the ceremony, he walked down from the stage and found her waiting by the stairs. She looked older. There was more gray in her hair, more lines around her eyes. But her smile was the same. "Congratulations, Private," she said, using the old rank on purpose. Michael laughed. "It's Mr. now, ma'am. Or soon-to-be paramedic, if the state board approves my license," she nodded, her eyes bright. "You know, I still have that dent in the side of the container housing unit. They never fixed it. Every time I walk past it, I think of you. I think about it every day," Michael said quietly. "I think about what you did. You could have ended me. Instead, you changed my whole life." Admiral Reyes reached into her pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a photograph. It was a picture of the 2 of them, taken during the deployment. Michael, in his dusty uniform, standing awkwardly next to her in front of the command tent. He had not known the photo existed. "I keep this on my desk," she said, "because it reminds me that the best leaders are not the ones who never make mistakes. They are the ones who learn from the mistakes of others and choose mercy anyway." Michael took the photograph and looked at it for a long time. Then he looked up at the woman who had seen him at his worst and chosen to see his best. "Thank you, Admiral," he said, "for everything." She saluted him. Not a casual wave, but a crisp, formal salute that drew the attention of everyone around them. And Michael, a civilian now, did not know how to return it. So he simply stood a little straighter and nodded. And that, somehow, was enough. Years later, Michael Torres became the head of emergency services for a small county in West Texas. He was known for his calm under pressure, his willingness to listen to the youngest members of his team, and his strange habit of keeping a small silver star in his pocket. He never told anyone the full story of where it came from. But every time a rookie paramedic made a mistake, every time someone froze or snapped or lost their temper in the middle of a crisis, Michael remembered the woman who had taught him that anger was not the enemy and that mercy was not weakness. And he passed that lesson on, one quiet conversation at a time. Admiral Elena Reyes retired from the Navy 6 years after that graduation. At her retirement ceremony, she gave a speech that was later printed in the Naval Institute proceedings. In it, she told a story about a young private who had shoved her against a wall in the middle of a war zone. She did not name him. She did not have to. She talked about the moment she realized that the soldier standing in front of her was not a threat, but a warning that the system was failing its people. That exhaustion and grief and fear were being ignored until they exploded. She talked about how that private taught her more about leadership than any military academy ever had. And she closed with these words: "The greatest honor of my career was not receiving a star. It was giving one away." Michael read the speech online, sitting in his office in Texas, the silver star warm in his hand. He smiled, wiped a tear from his eye, and went back to work. There were people who needed saving, and he knew exactly how to do it.